So the last thing we talked about was we were talking about energy use and how humans are using energy. And the sad thing is we're using it way faster than nature can build it. And we're going to get deep into that. What is fossil fuels? How nature makes fossil fuels? But we're talking about how energy can't be created or destroyed. And when I say we're wasting energy, what does that mean?
Wasting useful energy.
Because it's not like we're wasting. It's not like we're. If energy can't be destroyed, then how are we wasting it? Well, what we're saying is we're wasting. We're changing it from a useful form to an unuseful form. And there's only a certain amount of useful energy that we can use. And then if we burn it, if we mess with it, then it will turn into useless energy. And the example that we had for that was a potato chip. And I just had a bag of potato chips inside of the classroom, but I guess I don't. I ate it while I was going downstairs. But I had a potato chip, and the potato chip gave me energy for the day. But then what I could do is I could go outside and crush it, and then throw it up in the air, and the energy didn't disappear. There isn't any less energy. I didn't change the amount of energy in the universe. It's just would be really hard to use for my body if I had to go all over the place, all over the park, and pick up the crumbs and then eat them. It'd be a lot easier if it were in one nice compact potato chip, you know what I mean? That would give me, I would probably spend more calories looking out for all of that potato chip and all of the different, the big mess that I made, picking it all up and then eating those crumbs. It would be more useful for me to just have it as a potato chip in a bag. We cool?
Cool.
So energy can be created or destroyed, but the form that it's in is the usefulness of it can be created or can be destroyed. We're going to talk about unit conversion, but with this class, and remember what I was doing is with the electricity class, I'm going to hit you hard with mathematics. We're going to get into the mathematics. And I don't know, have you guys found it hard yet? It's not that bad because you guys understand the sine, cosine, tangent thing.
Yeah.
For Deja and Kalena, it might be a little bit tougher because you haven't had sine, cosine for the last 20 weeks. But I think you guys are doing pretty good with it. The concepts aren't that bad either. But I'm not going to do as much math with the STEM class itself because we're doing math in the electricity class. So I'm not going to do conversions, unit conversions, but I did want to tell you guys how energy is measured. In physics, we were talking about energy, and we were measuring it in terms of joules. So that would be one way of measuring it. Another way of measuring it, when we're talking about humans and how humans consume energy, us here in America usually measure things in calories. Okay, and you've heard of calories, right? You look on the back of the thing, and you got a 2,000 calorie diet. That means that's about how many calories you have. And you want to know the sad thing is we consume 2,000 calories. They say, okay, on average, an average American should consume about 2,000 calories. And if you consume about 2,000 calories, that will give you enough energy that you need for the day. You know what I mean? That way you use up your energy. You're not end up with this huge surplus of calories, because a huge surplus of calories leads to a big belly, and that's not what you want. So actually 2,000 calories is kind of a surplus anyway, but whatever. But I mean, if you calculate it down, it's actually equivalent to burning a 100-watt light bulb for a day. All of the talking, all of the running, all of the jogging, all of that kind of stuff is equivalent to pretty much a 101 light bulb. That's it.
So it's a lifetime?
Huh? No, per day.
Oh, okay. Because you can plug in a 100-watt light bulb
and just leave it on all day, and that would be the equivalent of how many calories a human uses. That blows my mind. It blows my mind. All right. Another way to measure it is you can measure it in kilowatts, which is another form of measurement, and basically that's like joules divided by time and that kind of stuff. Yeah, watts. We cool with that? So we talk about energy and its usefulness of energy, and I think that one of the nice things is so what they were saying is, say that you're in charge of a power plant, and your power plant has to be turned off for maintenance. So what you're going to do is you're going to call up Quebec where they have hydroelectricity, and they're selling energy. But the problem is you measure things in kilowatts hours, and they offer megajoules. Well, what do? Well, you just use the conversion that gets kilowatt hours to megajoules, and I'm not even going to go through the conversion because I promise you, no math. But what is hydroelectricity? Well, it's like a dam, and this isn't the picture of Quebec. This is actually from the Colorado River, the Glen Canyon Dam in Arizona.
So what they use for like the Hoover Dam?
Yeah, the Hoover Dam and whatnot. How is that? How does the energy get generated from there? Well, you got a lot of energy. You got a lot of water that's being piled up. That's being stored in a form of energy that we call, physics boys?
Oh, potential.
Potential energy. Awesome. That potential energy is going to fall, turning that potential energy into kinetic energy, which is moving types of energy. We can harness that moving energy by having this thing rotate these generators and then have these generators spin.
So water goes in, it spins the generator. That's what's called the
water goes in because of gravity. It falls down. The water will spin these turbines, and the turbines is what we use to make our electricity.
Oh, makes sense now.
And then what comes out of the dam? The water that we used. So all we did was we built up the water, dropped it off a cliff, and then now there's water coming out. And then all of that energy that we gained from, Mother Nature pretty much did the work for us by taking it, sucking it up in the clouds, putting it in the mountains, and then dropping it back down. And so now they brought the energy. Mother Nature did that work for us, and we're just harnessing that by taking all of this energy that they have stored up here, and then catching it as it falls. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then you can use it in different ways.
I never knew how it was to work.
I know, it's pretty cool, huh?
Yeah.
Energy is also burned, and where do we get this energy? We get it from chemical energy. Where do we get the chemical energy? We get it from the food you eat. So we talk about, like, here's a birthday cake, you eat that, you get a bunch of calories, but you use those calories that you burn when you go for a bike ride. You can't go for a bike ride unless you use those calories. Unless you eat those calories. Are we cool? 2,000 calories is about 4 Big Macs a day. So
hard to avoid.
Yeah, I know. I wouldn't recommend getting your calories and getting your energy in the form of a Big Mac, because that was not a good idea. In fact, I think there's a movie about it called Super Size Me, and that dude just almost died. But for the most part, you get energy by consuming these calories. And we don't usually define things in terms of how many people power. But what we could do is if equivalently you are equivalent to about 100-watt light bulb, then 1 horsepower would be 7.5 people. I don't know. I thought it was a funny conversion. But there are other ways to convert things. There are other forms of energy called BTUs, which is British thermal units. That's another terminology they throw out there. Essentially, what do I want you to take away from this? Essentially, all I want you to know is that there are different kinds of units out there. Calories, joules, BTUs, kilowatt hours. Those are all measuring energy. Those are all different ways of measuring energy. And they have different applications. And there's a conversion factor that will help you get through it. All right, here's the thing I thought was kind of interesting. Energy is a huge business. If you took all the money that America has in our entire economy, energy cost and all of that kind of stuff make up about $1 trillion every year. So of all of our money we have, maybe the $10 trillion that we have going in and out, 10% of that is all about energy. So if you divide that by how many people we have, 300,000 people. Wait. What is the population? It's 300 million? Yeah, I think so.
300, isn't that more than this island?
There's a million people on the island. I think it's 300 million. Population of U.S. 300 million. Yeah. All right. So if you divide that by 300 million, you end up getting about $4,000. So $4,000 per person spends every year on energy. All right, that's cool. About 1,000 of that money is actually spent on importing stuff. So that of the $4,000 that each person spends, so Austin gives me 4,000, Deja gives me 4,000, Kalena gives me 4,000. Say I'm the power plant guy, right? You give me $4,000 for the year for your energy, give me 4,000, 4,000, 4,000. I'm actually going to give away 1,000 of each of the money you give me every year to other companies, other countries. That's a lot of money that we're giving other countries because we need to import their oils and we need to import their stuff. But guess what? All that money I'm giving them, they can go and turn around and sure, maybe they might invest it in U.S. Imports and exports, but they can also go and buy guns. They can also go and buy their water skis and all that kind of stuff. And all of these guys are just making bunches of money off of us because they're selling us the fossil fuels. All right. This graph this graph pretty much shows. Here's the amount. The red dots over here is how much money or how much energy people in these countries are using, and it's measured in BTUs per person per year. So in Africa, you're not using much energy. You know what I mean? North America, we're like energy hogs. We're just energy consumers. We're at the top of the chart, killing everyone. However, China is a bigger consumer than America, but they're also way bigger in population than us. But here's the thing about it is like this graph right here, how much we make doesn't really correspond to how much we produce. And this is about how much we produce, which it seems to me that they're all about the same. You know what I mean? I hope to see that this graph was going up as this graph goes up. That means like, hey, I know we're using more, but we're producing more too. We're contributing to the pie. But it looks like Eurasia is the one who are using it, and that would be the Saudi Arabian companies and whatnot.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. So let's see. How much energy? I think another thing that was really interesting is that like we inside of our body only really use 100 watts of electricity, one light bulb, right? But how much energy do we use to support our light bulb? Us. How much energy do we use outside of our body to support the one light bulb that we have inside of our body? Does it make sense to you? So, right now I'm talking to you from a building. This building is being air conditioned. That's using a lot of energy, a lot more than a light bulb. I have the lights on all day. Even though it's bright outside, I have the lights on all day. I'm talking to you through the internet and a phone. There's a big screen on my computer is using up a lot of energy. I'm eating food that is consumed, and sure, like, all right, food is great, but how did I get the food? Well, they slaughtered it. They slaughtered an animal somewhere, maybe even in the United States, maybe somewhere on the island. I don't think it was from the island because I don't really buy organic stuff all the time. So they slaughtered it somewhere. They put it in a refrigerator. That uses a lot of energy. Then they took it inside of a packing truck and they shipped it down to wherever it is. And then they put it on a boat and shipped it to me. That uses a bucket load of energy just so I can eat a sandwich. So there's about, I would say it's almost like I'm only using one light bulb inside of me, right? But on the outside to serve me per day, I'm turning on 100. We calculated it out to be 100. It's almost like if you had 100 light bulb slaves to serve your one light bulb. You know what I mean? This is like we're using so much energy. All right, let's look at some of the percentages. So here's the breakdown. How much energy are we using, and how much of it? Like, let's calculate out the percentages. 85% of the energy that we use, just straight up, 85% are the non-renewable energies, the fossil fuels. We are dependent on fossil fuels. That's 37% oil, 26% gas, 21% coal. The rest of the 8%, that makes up the rest of the 16%. So I guess maybe 84% total. But 16% of that stuff, we're using renewable energy, like wind, solar, and nuclear energy. Well, nuclear technically isn't renewable, but it's very efficient. That's kind of sad, right? And then you're thinking to yourself, well, you know, they always say these stories about these, you know, power-hungry Americans who just waste. But the sad thing about it is this same percentage is pretty much the same across the board in almost all the countries you go to. Like, we're not the only ones consuming, that has 85% reliance on oil and fossil fuels. This is the story across the world. And the sad part about it is, all right, it's so unsustainable. Like, Albert Einstein says, I think it was Albert Einstein, I forgot who exactly it was. Let me get back to that before I make that quote, because I think I even have it down here somewhere. But essentially, what do I want you to take away from this topic? You know, this topic we've been having is the current system that we have might be the best one that we can come up with now, but it's so unsustainable. Like, we're going to run out very quickly. And you know, I mean, what I'm going to talk about next is how this stuff is created, and we're going to see that it takes about hundreds of millions of years to create, or hundreds of thousands of years to create this fossil fuel, and we're burning all of it up in hundreds of years. You know what I mean? So anyway, let's go on to lesson 3, because I think this is really interesting. All right, so we're going to talk about oil and how oil is created and where it's created. And we're going to talk about what fracking is, because I thought that was a funny word. All right, what the frack? Okay, so there's this show about, have you guys ever heard of the Beverly Hillbillies? Have you ever heard that song, or that show? It's from like the 60s, so I mean, I don't expect you guys to be like, oh yeah, I know about Beverly Hillbillies. It's about a dude named Jed, and he's basically like Duck Dynasty, where he like shoots a bullet, and then like this bullet like pokes a hole in the ground, and then like oil starts coming out. And so then the show is about how these guys struck it rich because they're like hillbillies who basically made a lot of money because they like randomly found this oil field, and they're like, sweet, and so then they're like
black gold.
Right, and so they the theme song is moving on up to the east side. You know, because then they're like making it over to Hollywood, where like they're all like, well, they're making it to Beverly Hill, where it's like super posh and everything, and everyone's like, dude, that's hecka cool, like so awesome, like hella whatever, and you know, and so anyway, I thought the story was absurd. I thought it was kind of interesting, but it's not completely absurd. Back in the 60s, that was the story they came up with, and there are places in the world where oil actually comes and seeps out of the ground. It actually comes out of the ground. Like, for example, has anyone ever been to the La Brea tar pits? Or has anyone ever heard of the La Brea tar pits? You've heard of it? You go down there, you can see a lot of ancient creatures, prehistoric creatures, like the saber-toothed tiger and the mammoth, and they found them, and they were basically just stuck inside of this tar pit, inside of like in California, in the middle of LA. There's this place, and I used to live in LA, so I went there, and the oil is just coming out of the ground, right? But for the most part, that doesn't really happen anymore. Let's talk about 1859 when they finally, when this dude named Drake, his first name was Edwin Drake. He was a colonel in the military, and he drilled one of the first wells. He drilled one of the first modern wells in 1859, and before that, people didn't really use oil as much. Some people, the Europeans, would use it as medicine. Maybe sometimes they would use it in their lamps. But before that, they didn't really use oil. They couldn't really get to oil very well. But Edwin Drake built one of the first oil drills, and in 1959, and it looked kind of like this. Here's what the original one looked like, and then here's what his new one looked like, the one in 1891. So we got 1859 versus 1891. Pretty cool? This is from the Library of Congress. And natural oil wells do exist, but the thing is, since 1891, we've put up a lot of different oil wells to go and take out all of these different places. So the idea, I mean, we've added maybe 1 million oil wells to like harvest all of this stuff. 1 million. So the idea of randomly finding oil, in the ground that no one has discovered before is pretty absurd. You know what I mean? They can't remake the Beverly Hillbillies in today's society. I guess that's why the Duck Dynasty is so popular, or one of the reasons why I like Duck Dynasty is because, these are hillbillies that made it like rich, but then again, so it's basically the story of the Beverly Hillbillies without the oil. All right, so you've seen this before in your like science class, right? You've seen photosynthesis. It basically takes carbon dioxide and water. The plant takes that in. It also takes a bucket load of sun or energy in from the sun, and it spits out oxygen. And then that oxygen is sucked in by animals. I'm one of those oxygen sucking things, and my body burns up that oxygen, and then I use that energy. I burn it and use it to do whatever, to talk to you, to stand up, to turn around, to dance, or to be creative or whatever. And then I breathe out CO2. That's the release gas. You've seen this before, right? You've actually seen the chemistry of this.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I think is when we use it, when we're using energy, we're actually just burning up this useful form of oxygen. And where did we get that oxygen? Well, we got that energy from plants. And the plants, where did they get that energy from? They got it from the sunlight. And when we're burning this, we burn this through a process called respiration. There's another process, what else does respiration? Well, every living creature does respiration. But also, fires help us with this process of converting this back. And you guys are thinking, oh, okay, well, you guys you ever think to yourselves, like when you were kids, oh man, I'm worried that like we're going to run out of air. You know what I mean? I remember thinking that when I was a kid. I'm worried that we're going to run out of air because we keep cutting down trees. I remember watching Fern Gully, and I guess the new version of that for you would be Avatar, right? And then you guys were like, well, we're going to cut down all the trees and we're going to run out of air. Well, the trees make the
ocean.
Well, the trees in the ocean, or these algae in the ocean, make the air about 10 times faster than we use it. So we're not really going to run out of air. But what does happen is this. So like we use the air, but the trees produce 10 times faster. But what happens with all of this excess trees, right? They die. And when the trees die, if they die in a place that doesn't have a lot of oxygen, where they can sink down and they can kind of get crushed on the bottom, what happens is they'll start all of the excess energy that they caught from the sun, they're going to keep with them. and that energy isn't going to be released because maybe it dies in a low oxygenated place. If it dies in a low oxygenated place, and if it's a woody kind of plant that dies, then what will happen over the next hundreds of thousands of years is you'll get coal. I like coal. Coal is good. If it's a slimy plant that dies, wait 100,000 years, you'll get oil, and that's good, right? But so like here, this is a picture of the Mississippi River, and it's shooting all of this stuff out over here. But what is that? This is all the mud that's coming out. But what is that green stuff that's coming out over here? That's all algae, and that algae is just kind of like settling down, and it's dying over there, and so that's why there's a lot of oil in the Gulf of Mexico, because algae is a slimy plant. Got it?
Okay.
So the problem that we're going to have, though, is that we're using up this oxygen. We're using almost up all of this oxygen, and the way that we're predicting it is like, yeah, it was Einstein who said it, that like if we use it at the rate that we're using, that America is using it, and if the rest of the world catches up to the rate that America is using it, we're going to run out of these fossil fuels by the end of this century. So by 2100, we're out of fossil fuels. And if we're 85% dependent, now you guys are thinking, oh, that doesn't affect me.
Could be dead.
Okay, my generation could say that it won't really affect me because I will be dead. I won't make it to 2100. You know, that would mean I would be 120 something years old, or 118 years old, and I ain't gonna make it that far. Just letting you know. But your generation is probably gonna live longer than my generation, just because each generation after us lives a little bit longer because of increases in medicine and all of that kind of stuff. So you guys might make it to like 100. And yes, this will directly affect you. And if it doesn't directly affect you specifically, it will affect your kids. Like back when we were having these discussions back in the 60s and the 80s, 70s and 80s, we were saying, oh, this will affect our great-grandchildren. And no one really cared. But what I'm talking about now is this stuff is coming up where it might actually run out for your kids. That's a scary idea. You know what I mean? Like, that's a scary thought. Not your great-great-great-grandkids, your kids. So we need to figure out a way to be less dependent on it, to come up with ideas about how to better use this stuff. This is a valuable resource that we're just really using up so quickly, and it's kind of scary. So anyway, that's all I wanted to talk to you guys about, was how oil was created, how coal is created, and how we're using this. And we're actually using this so quickly, but the problem is we're burning it up way faster than because like in the next 100 years, we're gonna use up all of the surplus that we got built up. Well, wait a second. Doesn't the Earth create more? Sure, it creates more. The plants die. It turns into mud. The mud turns into silt. That mud gets packed on and 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 pushed towards the Earth's core. The Earth's core will burn that stuff and kind of create that sludgy mess into something very useful called oil, and it will basically take all of the energy that the plants had from the sun, that excess energy that the plants had from the sun that it was stored up in the dead plant material, and push it together and create oil for us. Sure, yeah, it will. It will create more oil for us in the next 1,000 years, a couple of thousand years,
If you were to figure
hundreds
out a
of
way
thousand years.
to take that and make like an invention, you can produce oil 10 times faster.
You want to speed up the process.
Yeah.
That would be good.
Like very
Yeah.
rich too.
Yeah, like, man, you could really speed up the process of doing that. But here's the thing. All right, here's the thing about physics is later on one day you might learn about this thing called the law of thermodynamics. The law of thermodynamics has this idea called entropy. And entropy states that we are always going to tend towards a more disordered state. For example, if I have an ice cube, the molecules in the ice cube in a solid are rigid, right? And the molecules in a gas are bouncy, right? So I take an ice cube, I put it on the table. What happens? Well, that ice cube turns into water. So then your molecules go from an ordered state to a more disordered state. And then what happens after that? Those molecules will turn into gas. Oh, we're bouncing all over the place. Those molecules, that's turning an ordered state into a disordered state. Now, hey, wait a second. Can't I just put this in the refrigerator and freeze it back up again? Right? Can't I just put this water inside of the refrigerator and make an ice cube again? Sure. But how do you do that? Well, in order to do that, you would have to freeze the environment around it. You have to freeze this bigger space. That bigger space means more energy is being used up. You see what I mean? Like, if the refrigerator actually worked more efficiently, then you could technically cool your living room off by opening up the refrigerator. You know what I mean? But why doesn't opening up the refrigerator actually work to cool off your house? Why don't people leave the refrigerator open when they cool off the house? No, actually, your house will heat up. Because have you ever felt, and I don't recommend doing this because you can actually burn yourself, but have you ever felt the coil? There's like this gate in the back of your refrigerator, and usually it's hard to get to the back of the refrigerator. But I mean, if you go to the back of the refrigerator, there's this gate, and it gets really hot, and that's because it's sucking all of that energy from inside of this box and bringing it out.
So it's making it hot.
And then it's letting it go. So you're wasting some of this energy. It's almost like you want to spend some of this energy to put it into a more ordered state, freeze things. But in order to do that, you're expending more energy. So we have this thing called the Carnot efficiency, which governs like how efficient something can be. And if you look at like a motor, like a car motor, and I think we talked about this last time, you look at a car motor, you're actually only using 30% of the actual energy that can be used. The rest of it is just going into waste. So what you're telling me is you want to make a machine that will create energy 10 times faster.
But it would have to
yes, but I
energy.
Almost feel like it might take energy, you know what I mean, to do that. And it might take more energy to do that than it would actually create. And I mean, that might be what you're up against. But hey, if you can figure that out, you will make a lot. You will pretty much own the world. Because I was listening to this TED Talk, and this guy started his TED Talk off, and he said, I went over to the beach, and I found a lamp, and I rubbed the lamp, and I got a genie came out. And he says, and the genie says, well, what do you want? And he said, well, I want all the money in the world. I want everything. And so the genie says, okay, fine, here's all the money in the world. And then he realized that, oh, wait a second, I'm still not the richest person, even though if I actually literally have all the money in the world. So he says, okay, well, what I want instead of all the money in the world is, not only do I want all the money in the world, I want to own all of the small businesses and the large corporations in the world. You know what I mean? That would make him a pretty rich man. He would pretty much be the emperor of the world. Agreed? Yeah. But if you add up all of the money in the world, plus all of the banks, plus all of the businesses, and because there's money tied up in businesses and corporations, you know what I mean? That's not physical money. Like, I own Google now, and Facebook, and Apple, and Microsoft, and whatever. If you add up all of that, I can't really think of how much more money you can have. But if you add up all of that, that still is not as much money as all of the oil on Earth is worth. The oil is worth more on Earth, is worth more than all the money in the world plus all of the corporations.
Wow.
I know! Blew my mind. I forgot what the TED Talk was about, but I just remember that introduction. I was like, that's crazy. This is how big of a commodity we're putting on this. And why do you think we're putting a big commodity on this? Like, because it's limited. Like, somebody knows it's limited, so they're not going to be like, I mean, if it were like free and like unlimited, we'd just sell this stuff real cheap. You know what I mean? But that's not true. It's limited. And somebody's going to be making money off of this. And the sad part about it is, here in America, we're giving, of the $4,000 we're spending per person, 1,000 of that is going to those to those people out there who are just individuals. They're sultans and kings in the Middle East. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying I have something against like oil companies or whatever, but that's it's sad to see how that that unbalance of control is. What I'd like to see is like renewable energy to kind of take off. Because maybe a plausible idea for you is to say, okay, what if I built, sped up this process tenfold? But in order to speed up that process, you would have to use renewable, like you wouldn't be able to like use the energy here to make energy here. So what you would have to do is you would have to use some kind of alternate form of energy to make it worth it, right? But if that's the case, if running the motor will lose some of that energy, it won't be as efficient. Why don't you just redesign your motors to use the alternate form of energy in the first place? You know what I mean? Why try to create something that will run inside of our cars instead of just redesigning our cars to fit the renewable energy sources? I think that would be a good idea. You know what I mean? So, anyway, thank you for your talk. Thank you for hanging out with me. I'm sorry that my computer froze up. I'll tell you what, why don't I spend the last 10 minutes talking about what we're talking about in the electricity class. So, for you, Kalena and Deja, the class is done. I have not put up the reading yet, nor have I put up the assignments, and that's something I got to go and do. So I'm going to go and do that hopefully by the end of today. But I've got a bunch of grades are due today. So I'm going to put up lesson 3 reading assignment because that's where a lot of the stuff I was talking about I got it from. But in the last 10 minutes, Tiger and Austin, would it be cool with you guys if I went over some of the electricity stuff that you missed? All right.
Yeah.
So we talked about pretty much the only equation that you have so far in electricity is F equals K Q1 Q2 over R squared, right? I'm going to introduce you to another equation, and it's called the electric field, and it's saying E equals the force divided by Q.
Yeah.
Right? And it's just, what I mean by Q is I'm talking about a test charge. And I think that I really like this analogy, although I'm surprised I've never seen this before. Austin, you're a military man. You ever see these things before?
All the time. All the time.
Yeah, this is like, you're down with this, right? You've seen it all the time. So, like, we're building these things, and they're called contour maps. And, like, without any intuition, or without any, like, prior knowledge, Tiger, have you seen it before?
No.
Have you been officially taught this before, the contour maps? But
Well, I kind of recognize it. I have it's like a height map, right?
yeah, okay, all right, good. It's an elevation map, all right, cool.
Use a lot of C.
But watch, check this out. Without really any real experience with this before, because Austin has had official experience. Without any real official experience with this before, could you tell me that if I took a ball, a giant beach ball, or let's say a tire, and put it right here where the 5,000 is, what would happen to that ball?
Will it roll toward the all lower areas?
Yeah, it would roll this way. Agreed? Now, what if I put
Yeah.
it right on that X over there? If I took that ball and I put it right on that X, what do you think would happen?
Well, I assume the X must mark the very center point, so perhaps it wouldn't move at all.
Yeah.
From-
Yeah.
from the-
I mean, without any experience, you can kind of tell that, hey, there's no lines over there. This must mean there's a flat area over here. And the closer these lines are together, I'm assuming, it almost looks to me,
Plateau.
that we're talking about like a very steep thing over here. Whereas if I put a tire over here, would it still roll down? Yeah, it would roll down. Would it roll down as fast? No. Not as fast as if you put it right here. Without any experience, you can read this thing. So essentially, when we're talking about electric fields, and all right, I guess one way you can kind of think about this, these contour maps, is this would be like, let's pretend this were like some kind of gravitational field. Does that make sense? Where to say like, oh, if I put a tire here, the gravity will pull it down faster than if I put a tire over here, the gravity won't pull it down as fast. And really, since you and I, you, me, and Austin have covered inclined planes, that could be true, right? Because it's not necessarily that the gravity is different, but it's the effect that the gravity has on it.
Acceleration.
Right, the acceleration is totally different. So this would be more like an acceleration map, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of the idea that we're doing with the electric field, the electric field, which is E equals F over Q. In fact, if you multiply both sides by Q, then what we're doing is you have F equals EQ, which kind of looks like F equals MA. You know what I mean?
But it's like F equals AM.
Yeah, well, it would be, because the E, the electric field is more related to that acceleration that we were talking about. And how would you build a map like this? Like, what would you do if you didn't have Google Maps already for you? You actually had to go and explore a new place and build a map like this.
What does a Navy do?
Yeah, what does a Navy do?
Use sonar.
Okay, fine. What is Navy? What's like the most basic old school technology you use? What I would literally do is I would take along a tire with me.
And watch it.
And I would put it at different spots. I would kind of make a bird's eye sketch of it. I'd put it at different spots, and I would time how fast it goes. If it goes real fast, if
It's
it
gonna be high.
rips, then I know, hey, that must be a really
high incline.
right a high incline. And if it's kind of going moderately fast, and that's how I could actually assign a number to, the steepness of this thing. Would that be a good way?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
the way we do it in electricity is say that we have a charge like a Q, and then what we'll do is we'll take a point charge, which is like just a piece of dust or something like that. That's a Q, and we'll see how that thing moves. It's kind of like taking a tire along with us, and we'll put it at different spots,
So the whole thing
and we'll
was
see
the
how
lines
it,
and
it,
everything.
it moves. Yeah, and that's exactly. And what happens is we create these electric field lines. We create these drawings where we have something like this. If I have a positive charge and I put another positive test charge over here, where would it go? It would go straight out. What if I put it here? It would go straight out. What if it goes here? It would go straight out. So this one would radiate outwards. If I have a negative charge inside and I put a positive charge over here, that would go straight in. So that's why that's drawn that way. If I mix it up and I put a positive one on one side and a negative one on one side, let me get a bigger picture. Yeah, that's a nice big picture. A little confusing, but okay. Actually,
Makes sense.
I like it. I like it a lot because you know why?
Sounds fun.
It would be a positive, like it's going to go from here, and it would go to this. Like, let's say that we put a test, our tire or a test charge right here. Well, what would happen? It would be repelled by that positive charge this way, but it would be attracted to that negative charge, and so it would really just go along that line.
Why can't it just go up and then straight like diagonal? Why does that have to have like
A curve?
Yeah.
Well, think about this. If you have a test charge right here, exactly on this middle point, right? What happens is your positive charge will repel it exactly that way, right? And the negative charge will pull it exactly this way. So the actual end resultant force will be completely horizontal. But as soon as it moves to that horizontal, it's actually going to start being pulled down. So that's why it's going to start to arc. It won't go straight line like this. In fact, very few things in nature actually do straight lines like that. Pretty much everything arcs. And this is how it's governed. Are we cool with that?
Yeah.
So I'm introducing you to this concept of electric field, which is really just F over Q. And that Q that we're talking about is a Q naught. And we don't want to make the test charge so big that it actually affects things. For example, if this is my actual charge that I'm testing, I'm going to say, how does a test charge, and then I put in a test charge that's like this big, then really this charge right here will start being moved by this test charge, right? I want to make it the opposite way around. I want to make the test charge, small enough so that it doesn't really affect any of the other charges around it. I can assume that it is not affecting these charges over here. And then if we put enough of these test charges over here, we can actually see these field lines. And this is not just this theoretical thing. I think what's really cool is, let me show you this.
So somebody's put there and the magnets did it themselves?
They put a bunch of iron shavings.
Could you literally see it with your eyes?
And then they put two magnets. I don't know. I can see that literally with my eyes.
I mean, like, when it actually was happening. Could
Yep.
you do that?
Yeah. This is actually what happens. How did we discover this? Well, some dudes were in the lab. They had a bucket of nails on the table. They turned on these giant magnets, and all of a sudden the nails aligned themselves with the electric fields.
That's cool.
That would blow my
I'd
mind.
be like, what? Phenomenal.
I'd be like, that's crazy. That's crazy cool. Like, I'd feel like that's a message from like the universe or something like that. And essentially, this is the way the universe works. So, I mean, that it's kind of showing us how this thing aligns itself. I actually used to have these demonstrations, and it's really cool. So these are actual pictures that gave me a server error. But this is the idea behind electric fields. And essentially, when we're drawing electric field maps, all we're doing is making a contour, a contour drawing. In fact, I was saying, oh, this is confusing because it's got these circles over here.
What does it mean?
I don't know. I don't know what those circles mean, but I could almost envision this. Now, let me know if you can envision this. Could you see a mountain right here?
Yeah.
Can you see a mountain?
It almost looks like a contour.
Right? This could almost be a mountain right here. And actually, I would almost say that this is a mountain as well, so it might look like boobies. Whoops. But maybe not a mountain. Let's pretend that this is a valley. Because it could have the same contour map look thing, right? Like, how would you distinguish if you had a mountain right next to a valley?
You usually will.
You would use different colors?
They would use different colors and then they'd have negatives.
Right, they would put negatives in front of the things and they would actually tell you the
Below,
altitude.
like a certain.
Alright, but let's pretend that this is a mountain, okay? And this is a valley that's almost like taking that exact mountain and then just like turning it over.
Yeah.
Then I could totally relate this to a physical thing where, can you imagine that if I had a mountain over here and I put it right up against a valley that looks kind of like this, then if I put a marble on this mountain, what will happen? Well, it will slide down the mountain like this, but then it will roll into the valley. Or if I shoot a marble out this way, it will kind of go all the way around and then roll into the valley. Or if I slide a marble straight towards the valley, it would just go right into that valley. That's kind of what's going on. That would be like a physical representation of what's going on. I actually like this contour map lesson. I don't know why people don't teach it like this, but anyway, You're going down the mountain, and then hey, the valley's going to start sucking it up. There we go, the valley. Cool.
Mhm.
And the way we draw these field maps
Yeah.
is we always make it from positive to negative. So, like, let's say that we have two positive charges. This would be a mountain, and this would be another mountain. And
You could never roll it back up, right?
right, what would happen is you would roll this way, and what's going on is this thing is kind of like a test particle right here would be repelled by this, but it would also be repelled by this one, so it would kind of go up like that. And it's not really, the reason why it's going up into the diagonal over here is because it's being more repelled by this one than it is by this one because it's further away. We cool with that?
Yeah.
I don't know, I think these contour maps are very easy to draw and very cool to think about. I mean, it's not that really that hard. You have 3D models that are shown.
Except for like the valley one that we saw on the mountain.
Where?
Right there, the blue one.
Oh, hey, look, it's a mountain and a valley.
You can totally see it coming down.
Yeah, you see, you got one mountain and you got a valley. And if I start something over here, I could go straight across and it would go, phew. Or if I start something over here, it would go, phew. But then it would start getting sucked up over here and go into that valley. Hey, I like that. Good job, Ohio State. Where's that website from? Oh, it's from Physics 132, which is the physics of electricity. Ha! I like that. Good job, Dr. Kenneth Boland. I like your stuff. I like your style. All right, cool. So that would be our lecture on electricity and stuff. I pretty much finished off chapter 19. You can read off the rest of it. I think I covered all of that stuff. The only thing I didn't cover is electric flux, which I guess I can cover real quickly later. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys later.
All right.